6:30. Taneytown Planning Commission, please come to order. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. Would you please stand to the pledge of the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the records reflect the members of the commission that's here this evening. Commission members should have received draft minutes July 30th, 2018. Is there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
No, sir.
I'll entertain a motion for exception.
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried, unanimous. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the BCA hearing 2018-2005, Taneytown Crossing, recommendation Board of Zoning Appeal. Scheduled hearing to be on September the 12th, 2018 at 7:30. Jim, would you lead us off on that, please?
Okay. The proposed project is a community with semi-detached and apartment dwellings in the R7500 district. Both of those uses are special exceptions in R75. There are also some variances requested in there, and you've all got a copy of the application to review ahead of time. And we're here this evening. It's on your agenda as we've been doing since the code changed and required that any pending Board of Appeals case for a variance or a special exception comes before you for your opportunity to provide comment to the board or any recommendations to them. So I can open it up for any discussion, or if folks from the gallery have something to say about it.
Okay, did everyone have their packet? They're drawing in the packet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a representative that would like to speak to the commission?
Matt Lazuriaga is the attorney for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Gillen. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Matt Lazuriaga. I'm an attorney in Westminster, and I'm here this evening with representatives of my clients who are the applicants in the case that Mr. Wieprick just referenced. That's before the commission tonight for any comments or potential recommendation that you may have. As Mr. Wieprick so succinctly put to the commission, the application is for a residential community that's made up of both semi-detached and one garden apartment building, but all are apartment dwellings under the city's zoning ordinance. As we've confirmed with town administration during our exploratory process and putting together the application that's before you, the proposed use is within the town's R7500 zone, and it's also in terms of the comprehensive plan entirely within a priority fund area. The proposed use as a special exception is, in zoning parlance, presumed to be a valid use of the property. I don't want to delve too far into the weeds of the zoning nuances that are going to be entertained at the September 12th public hearing, because I don't think that's quite what is asked of us this evening. But what my clients have hoped to do this evening is give the Planning Commission a flavor of the project to the extent that you can't glean it from the plans that are in front of you. Sometimes things don't necessarily pop off the page as they might when they're explained to you by the people that have the desire to accomplish the project and the passions behind it. Those folks are here this evening to explain to you some more of the specific characteristics of the nuts and bolts of the project. But at the conclusion of this evening, what my clients are asking for this board to do is consider a favorable recommendation that we could use to bolster our application to the Board of Zoning Appeals on September 12th. Any questions may more appropriately be directed to myself, depending on what's being asked, or someone that's here to speak on behalf of the applicants, again, depending on the nature of the inquiry. But I know that the principal of the named applicant in Jessica Zuniga is going to take the podium in a moment, but she also has some visuals for the commission to consider. So to the extent that it's logistically difficult, please work with us, but we've got something that we want to put up on the easel for you gentlemen to look at while she's explaining it to you. So we will work that out as best we can. To that extent, I'm going to turn things over so that the commission has the opportunity to hear from the applicant themselves, and Ms. Zuniga is going to come up.
Is it okay if I talk to the plan here, or would you prefer me be at the podium?
I prefer you to talk into the mic if you would, please. That's basically what we have in front of us, correct?
Yes, yes, sir, it is. Is this okay? You good to talk to here? Okay,
Well, the only problem with that is then
they can't see
they
it.
can't see it. So let's go back to where it was. Because we have what we need in front of us.
Could it be right here, Matt? Would that be,
That's good.
is that,
That'll work.
We'll make that work.
okay, okay.
Okay, you share.
I'm going to share yours to save room.
Sounds good. Okay, Westview, East Baltimore Street, okay, we're good.
Okay, so I wanted to start first by describing the area to people in case you aren't familiar. There is several vacant lots at the corner of 140 and Harney Road. So those are subject of our application. There is also, as you move up Harney Road past the intersection of Westview Drive, there is an existing semi-detached unit, which is also property that's subject of this application. Our plan is to demolish that. And then we would also create, I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Would you identify that one again, the one you want to demolish, because you
Yeah, so-
kind of slow down a little bit
Okay.
so we can
Yes,
absorb
sir.
what you're telling us?
Okay.
And what was your name again?
It's Jessica Zuniga from Foundation Development.
Okay.
We are the applicant. Okay, so we have two lots that are currently vacant that front on Westview Drive and 140 as you come around the corner on Harney Road. So those are currently vacant lots that are the subject of this application. When you go north past the intersection of Westview Drive, there is an existing semi-attached unit that is on the corner of Westview and Harney, and it faces Harney. So we're going to propose to demolish that. There is another vacant parcel directly adjacent to that as you move up Harney Road. There is an existing semi-attached unit, and then there is the driveway, a small parcel of vacant land, and the driveway to existing apartments that are just north of our subject site. We have also included a site that is a flag lot that comes off of the driveway that there's an existing driveway, and we're proposing that that also serve the rear of the lot. So it's a compilation of 6 lots.
Okay.
All of which are currently vacant with the exception of the corner lot at Westview and Harney.
Okay, continue.
So our proposal includes 13 semi-detached units that would total 26 residential units, and then 1 garden building that is offset from Harney Road that would be 10 units. We are proposing a community building.
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, got the 10 units.
How big is that community building?
The community building is about 1,500 to 1,800 square feet. And the community building would have office for on-site management and maintenance. We'd also have 24-hour emergency maintenance available. We would have a multi-purpose community room that includes a kitchenette and also a business center and free Wi-Fi for the residents in the community building. We also are proposing a dog park, which came from some of our conversations with the council members, and a tot lot
And a what?
for the residents. A tot lot, a playground for small children, under 6.
Where's the tot lot?
The tot lot was next to the community building. It unfortunately did not make it on this plan, but I would envision it being where the dog park is, and then we'd probably move the dog park over on the other side of Westview, so that we're creating amenities for the other residents on the other side of the street as well.
On the other side of Westview, did
Yes,
you
sir.
say?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're taking it out of this side and putting it over here.
Yes, I believe so. I believe that would be the right relocation. We would want the playground next to the community building.
Continue.
So all of the units, and I'll show you, if I may, I'll show you our elevations. So these are, of course, preliminary, but I want to be able to give you sort of a feel what the architecture would look like.
turn that around a little bit here.
So the proposed materials are all durable materials. We're proposing brick and cementitious siding, more commonly known as hardy plank. All of the buildings will be Energy Star certified and meet the National Green Building Standard, which is commensurate with LEED. So we are doing high performance, high quality buildings. The elevations, we really tried to pick up on, what we were seeing in the existing neighborhood where there are a number of semi-detached units where they have sort of the dormer window look. So this would be a streetscape where you come around the corner of Harney Road from 140. So this will give you kind of an idea of the massing of the buildings. And then this would be from the corner of Westview Drive in Harney. So this would be our end unit that faces Harney. And you can see the garden apartment from the background here. And then this is sort of an overview, sort of a bird's eye view of how the site would lay out.
Okay.
What's the color of those buildings?
I'm sorry, the cover?
Color.
The color? We're open to suggestions. This is really just a simulation. I mean, we have some sort of, I call it red brickish color, some blues. I believe there's some yellows in here as well. But we're open to suggestions on that. We're not married to any particular color.
Well, I would say at this point not get too caught up in the design, only because it is going to be subject to the Design Standards Committee as well, which is going to have significant say in the final outcome of what they look like. So I would, for the commission, I say we focus less on those types of details at this point.
And they're all 2 stories, right?
Yes, 2.5 stories in some cases.
But what we have down there now, coming around, are all single-story homes, right? They're on the north side of West Baltimore Street are ranchers.
The last couple on West Baltimore Street are ranchers, and then as you come around Harney, there are 2.5 story, the existing semi-detached are 2.5 story, or 2 stories with like a small dormer. I'd call them 2.5 stories.
Okay, but they're coming down. Right.
One of them
Several
is.
that are existing. We're bringing one down, but there are several that are existing.
Okay.
But across West Baltimore Street are multi-story homes,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, and across.
That's on the south
and
side.
across Harney.
And on the other side of Harney, yes. And the one thing I'm sorry I did not mention before I put my plan here is we're also going to be creating sidewalks along all of our streetscape to try to really create the connectivity and the walkability into downtown.
It'll be required. That's a requirement.
So you're working around Ronnie Welker's site here then?
Yes, and we did try to contact him. I sent him a number of letters. I have not been able to get a phone number for him, but I have not gotten a response back from him. We did try to include the property.
Okay, continue on. Yeah.
That is the conclusion of my presentation.
Okay, at this point, does anyone up here have any comment before I open it to the floor? Is there anyone from the floor who would like to make any comments? Come to the podium, please. State your name and
Mike Uttenreither, I'm on Pump House Road, which is
What's the name?
fine. Mike Uttenreither?
you're on the list, right, Jim? His name's on the list as one of the property owners there.
Did you receive a letter?
No, I'm on the other side of Harner's property from this area, so I'm not immediately.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
But it was brought to my attention at one point that this apartment complex may be inclined to lend more to HUD housing. And that's been a concern in reducing the income level even more of Taneytown, which right now is of the 7 larger cities in Carroll, they're the very bottom of the list according to the United States Census for average per capita income. So to bring in more housing that's considered lower income housing is just going to reduce that even more, as much as we try and upgrade the city by doing cityscape and all the other projects that we spend a lot of time and effort on. And I have great concerns that the property isn't being lent to that type of draw, and, you know, it becomes an upscale property and not just another lower income, which I'm not opposed to having lower income, but obviously from the statistics for this town, we have a lot of lower income property already, and we don't need to plan more.
Anyone from the,
I'd like to ask.
would ever like to address that, if they are gonna be HUD?
Yeah.
Please come to,
My name is Jeff Paxson.
wait till you get to the mic.
I'm horrible with these microphones, so. My name's Jeff Paxson. I'm actually with a company called Pax Edwards. We're one of the developers that's partnered with Foundation Development. I just want to address what the gentleman said about HUD housing. I think when he said HUD housing, I think he's probably referring to either Section 8 or public housing. And I just wanted to say that this is not a Section 8 project. This is not a subsidized project in the sense where residents are given subsidy from the government in order to pay rent to live in our community. We do get financing through the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, and that financing allows us to build a really high-quality community, which you can see. And actually, I should say Jessica's, renderings are. The intent of those renderings is to show you not necessarily exactly what they're going to look like at the end of the day, but to show you the quality of what we're going to build. And what we're going to build is going to be a high-quality community that's going to stand out in Taneytown and really be an asset for this community. The rents in our community are going to be, I want to say on average about $1,000 a month, which for Taneytown is on the higher end of the scale, not on the lower end of the scale. I would say our average income for the families that are going to live in Taneytown Crossing it's going to range from about $30,000 to $60,000 a year. And these are working families. These are people that live and work in this community today. They live here, they work here, they shop here, and we're here to provide, more quality housing for them and uplift the community. So no, it's not HUD housing. And so I just wanted to clarify that. So,
Is this a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom? Are
it's
these
a combination
mostly
of,
3 bedrooms?
Jessica can speak more to the detail, but I believe that the duplexes are predominantly 3 bedrooms and the apartments are predominantly 1 bedrooms. Is that?
1 and 2 bedrooms.
1 and 2 bedroom apartments? Okay.
But everybody thinks that HUD housing's so bad, but you select them just the same as you do anyone else.
Yeah.
You don't have to take a HUD person. And
we
that's what everybody thinks, you got to take a HUD person.
We take people based upon their background check, based
Right.
upon, we run criminal checks. We want good quality residents, because if we bring bad people in, we've got to manage it, and we've got to deal with it, then we have problems. So, my company has been doing this for the last 7 years. I've been in this business for the last 15 years. There's no benefit to us to bringing in, low quality residents that cause problems for
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So,
we're not going to build this $15 million community and then fill it up with the kind of element that I don't think people want.
Are these all going to be rental properties?
These are rental units.
All rentals?
These are all rental, yes. So they're all rental. They're professionally managed. I think Jessica said we have a community center on site. And in that community center, there's a management office and a maintenance office. And those folks are there to manage the property and make sure that it looks beautiful the way we want it to. So.
Is the community center gonna be open for the community or just that local community?
It's just for the residents of Taneytown Crossing, so.
What about the dog, what was it, dog run, dog park?
The dog park is just for the residents of Taneytown Crossing, so. yeah,
you'll
it's-
probably do the maintenance on it then too, right?
We do all the, yeah, we hire our own maintenance tech, we hire our own manager, and they're on site to
And
deal
that's a
with.
plus.
Yeah, so it's, yeah. And the reason why we don't open up, the community center and the dog park to outside folks is because then we can't control who comes in and out. And so we want to have a nice, safe community that we can control, so. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to make comments? Mayor?
Tonight, I'm citizen Jim McCarron from 22 York Street. I am also the mayor, and it's a very unusual event that I appear before this board, and I do that purposely because this is an autonomous board that needs to make their own decisions, and I respect that and appreciate that. But I want to go on record as saying that I oppose this project wholeheartedly and emphatically. There are many reasons for this, some of which were mentioned by Mr. Uttenreuther a few minutes ago. The gentleman that spoke previous to me mentioned that this wasn't subsidized housing. I take exception to that. The state of Maryland is funding the majority of the construction costs for this project, which means that our tax dollars, yours and mine, are funding this to provide low-income housing. I've surveyed the major landlords in this town. They don't receive any kind of tax subsidies for their low-income housing. I'm very proud of the fact that Taneytown has a wealth or an overabundance, I would say overabundance, of low-income housing already. We don't need any more. I see no positive value to this project whatsoever. The buildings are nice, it's fine, it's professionally managed, all that's well and good. But the fact is that the folks that live in that community are going to have, well, they're going to contribute less to our overall town than I'd like to see. The town receives income in two ways, property taxes and income taxes. Folks that move into this community, chances are, not going to be paying much income tax. But yet they'll be demanding the services that we offer. They'll be demanding the police services, which seems to be higher in low-income areas. They'll be demanding EMS services. They'll be demanding the whole gamut of services that we offer without contributing anything to the community at large. I question the fact whether the roads, whether Harney Road and Westview Drive can accommodate this extra volume of traffic. I just see no positive effect whatsoever on the city. It's not the place for this, number one. This area is primarily single-family residences with one exception of an apartment house down there. And it should be maintained that way. I think it'll have an adverse impact on property values at large. We talked about Taneytown being the lowest per capita income in the county. There's no question about that. But that's because we also are the low-income capital of the county. There's more low-income housing in Taneytown already than anywhere else in the county. We don't need any more. I encourage you to recommend to the Board of Zoning Appeals that they reject this project. The Mayor and City Council wrote a letter to the DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, stating the fact that we oppose the grant that they've applied for, or the loan that they've applied for. Again, there's no justification for the taxpayers of the state of Maryland being on the hook for this kind of money, for this kind of property in a town that already has an abundance of low-income housing. I'm sorry that that's not a very positive statement, but I encourage you to see your way clear to vote recommendation for no on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCarron. Anyone else from the floor would like to come forward and make comments? Ma'am.
Jessica Zuniga from Foundation Development again. I did want to just address a few things from the mayor's statement. We are not actually receiving subsidy from the state of Maryland. We are using the Housing Tax Credit Program, which is an IRS code, and it's a federal allotment that each state gets. And so that is the funding that we are using for our construction. When Jeff was speaking of subsidy, what we were talking specifically about is rent subsidy, meaning everyone who lives here will be paying their own contract rent. There is no one paying their rent for them. So these are working people. I would also offer that we pay our full freight and property taxes. So we have not asked for relief of the city, and we have not asked for relief from the county for our property taxes. So we will be paying our full freight and property taxes. I think based on our rent and the income limits that we serve, I do think that based on our market study, a lot of people already live here in the city of Taneytown and are working people who are contributing to the tax base. You know, we see primarily in our communities, you know, over 95% of our applicants and our ultimate residents are coming from the same zip code as the community. So we're not usually bringing new people in, and I don't see that would be the case here either. So I just wanted to clear those items up. I thought it was just important to make some distinctions there.
Thank you. Mr. Glass, Mr. Glass, without getting into a conflict of interest, what percentage of your property are already rented?
Right now, 90% of them are rented.
So 10%, you have 10% of what you have is still vacant
Right.
for renters. Just trying to judge if there's really a need for additional rental space, or rental need in Taneytown.
Do you have other projects like this? Do you have other rental areas like this?
Yes.
Local?
I don't have anything in Carroll County. I have Baltimore County, I have Hartford County, I have Cecil County, I have Eastern Shore, which would be Talbot County, Caroline County, Wacomico County, Worcester County. I just don't have Carroll County.
Do you ever sell these units?
We've done some communities where after a period of time, we do what's called a lease purchase, where we lease it to the residents and then sell it to them. But that's after a long period of time. We have never actually sold any of them. That would be after 15 years, we would be able to sell them for the way the IRS regulations work with the financing that she talked about. So for purposes of tonight's discussion, this is a rental community, so.
Long-term ownership.
Yeah, so we hold these things for the long term, so,
Which of these similar developments are the oldest that you've done?
that I've done, the oldest one I did was in 2012, and that's in Talbot County.
Okay, can you provide me an address of some sort?
Sure.
Do you know it off the top of your head, or at least an area?
I know the area, it's Easton.
Okay,
Easton, I have to get the address, if you give me your contact information, I can email it to you.
okay.
The closest one I have to here is Holland Station, and we built that in 2015, and that is in Baltimore County, Lansdowne.
How many units in that one?
That one is 48 townhouses. They're actually 2- and 3-story townhouses. I think that would be the visit.
Tell us about these houses.
What do you, anything particular, George? I mean, we don't want to go into a lot of detail.
What's the inside going to be like?
So the semi-attached units are, obviously they're set up almost like a townhouse, right? So you would have on the first floor, you have, you know, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen. Full dishwashers, microwaves, you know, full category of appliances. The second floor would be your bedrooms, and a few of them are 2 bedrooms, most of them are 3 bedrooms. So we would have 2 bedrooms on one floor, and then sort of a loft bedroom on the half story. There would be 2.5 bathrooms in each of the units, so we'd have one on the ground floor, and then we have, you know, 2 bathrooms on the upper floors, 4 bathrooms. You know, high quality finishes, durable materials, full wood cabinets, vinyl plank flooring, would like vinyl plank flooring, carpet in the bedrooms. Am I covering that, or are there other things inside the unit that you?
Just wondering what you had in mind.
And our the garden apartment building, obviously, they would be flat units, 2 bedrooms. We have 2 bedroom, 2 baths, and 1 bedroom, 1 baths, with a similar fully equipped kitchen, as well as same finishes.
Yeah, I was gonna just add to that. In terms of the quality, these are, like I said, these are really high quality houses that we're proposing, and I'd be happy to take anyone on a tour of the closest community we have to us, just so you guys can get a sense for what these things are, what they feel
Why did you select to put a dog park in, or a dog run, whatever you can call that? I mean, I don't see a dog park in the middle of a residential area.
And Councilmember Wance is laughing because he knows where that came from. So we have met with a number of local people, including some of the council members, and that was actually a suggestion as an amenity that we could offer that, local residents might be interested in. And we are seeing that. It's becoming much more common. I mean, we allow pets, dogs within a certain size limit, and people want to have their pets with them. It is a marketing issue. So we thought it was a reasonable idea, and so we included it.
I just noticed, thinking about the one in Mount Airy off of 27. It's been there for quite a few years. Did they close that up? I thought they closed that up for lack of something.
Means Crossing is including a dog park, are they not?
Batesville Apartments?
They are.
Yeah,
Not that I know of.
okay. I just don't know if I would want to live close where a bunch of dogs running.
Well, it's contained.
You
It's-
never contain a dog.
You've had a bad experience with dogs, haven't you? Out of curiosity, and Mr. Wypeck might be able to answer this better, are open space impact fees going to be a part of this development?
That would be the standard, when the zoning certificate or building permit is applied for. That's where we would collect the whole suite of benefit assessment and impact fees. Open space, fee in lieu, police, parks. Parks is open space, but
Right.
All the normal fees will be,
there have not been any discussions about waiving or reducing
Okay.
the usual suite of fees.
As we were discussing amenities that they're offering to their community that are not being extended to the city, which is, fine and well for their decision. I just want to make sure that there were going to be fees that would help the city in lieu of actually getting amenities.
Is this coming forth now because of possibility of the Sewell Farm being developed?
I think this has been in pipeline longer than the Sewell's.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think this is something that is probably a need to a certain extent everyone has to start somewhere. Not everybody can start living in a house they own.
And I think that's the most attractive thing about this, is that it's based on the meetings that I was in with them. I think the intent is that this is more of a launching point. It is not intended to be necessarily long-term rentals for these people. It's to give them that extra boost as they, build credit, build income, whatever it happens to be. And at some point, they can income out of this. Is that correct? They can make too much money to live in these, and that's kind of their launching point. So there is advantage to it in that way. At the same point, I hear and acknowledge what the mayor has said. He makes some valid points as well. I look at it from a different view than maybe the rest of you, because I have several bites at this pie between planning commission and council and even the design board. So you're going to see a lot of me as this progresses through. So I try to look at it from many different points of view. It's a really tough thing. One of my biggest hesitations on it is, as you enter Taneytown from the west, this will be one of the first things people see. So it's important that if this does go forward, that it will reflect on the city well. There would be very high expectations of maintenance of things of that aspect. I think it would be appropriate for the BZA to even consider requesting some sort of sign as part of it, a welcome to Taneytown sign on that corner if it were to go forward. Something that could really help the city as well. But even, how many weeks ago did I meet with all of you? I'm still a little split on it. I like a lot of things about it. I'm very hesitant about other things about it. And it's kind of making a little bit of a challenge for me up here. So I'm kind of hoping that other members of the commission could maybe help push me one way or the other, depending on how they view it.
Well, as I have experienced rental units, I always seem to think that rentals don't take care of their properties as well as homeowners. I see things sitting around. We have other rentals in Taneytown. The backs of houses aren't very attractive. There's always stuff sitting around in the backs of these houses. They don't put things away. Where are they going to store things here? I notice that there's not going to be much storage for anyone that lives here. People just don't seem to take care of rentals like they do their own home. And this is going to be a lot of them here in one area. And what sort of control are you going to have over that?
What I would say is that's actually, part of the benefit of having a professional on-site management company with an on-site manager and on-site maintenance person.
Is that every day?
There's somebody there
Someone going to be there every day?
every day, Monday through Friday. I can't guarantee that there's somebody there every day, Saturday and Sunday, but every day Monday.
Going to be an office?
Yeah, there's gonna be an office and someone there to enforce the lease. And the lease says you can't have stuff laying around. And the lease makes you keep a clean property. And if you don't, then we have the ability to enforce it and remove people. And so that is a little bit different than, than other rental properties, is that, we want this place to look beautiful. We finance our communities through, we said it's Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Every year they come out and they look at our properties, relatively unannounced.
Who does?
The Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, they're the ones that provide us the financing that we're using for this. And, if our properties don't look as good as what we would like, then we're gonna have a problem next time we go apply for financing. So we have every incentive to keep a beautiful community, to keep it beautiful. And, as far as, the councilman, asking about an entrance sign, and those are the kind of things that we can talk about and do. Talking about the exterior of the buildings and having it be something that when you drive into Taneytown, that gives you guys the wow factor that you want. Those are the kind of things that we can do, especially now since we're at the schematic stage where it's an idea,
Well, as I look at those, they're kind of a drab-looking group of houses. No color involved. They even look like they're low-income houses.
I don't think that the printer that made that board is that great. It makes it look a little bit, I don't know.
Are they all going to be
I
one?
don't love the way those pictures look, and we have the flexibility.
How do you determine the looks on those homes?
We determined them with our architect, and we were basically doing that to put an application into the state where this isn't the final product at the end of the day. This was just a schematic drawing, and we needed to put our application in. And so that's not final, and we are absolutely open to suggestions and ideas as to how to make this into something you guys would be proud of.
Well, who will determine the looks of these houses, you or someone else?
We
Yes,
have a professional architect that designs the houses, and we have to approve what they propose.
And as I mentioned previously, this is subject to the design board for Taneytown because of its location. So there will be input from them and requirements from that board to make sure that it fits in that old town standard that we're going for. So, I see this as concept, maybe even pre-concept at this point. But there's a long way to go before we start really getting into the design aspect of these things.
I would really see those three houses right there to be ranchers, to be more consistent with the houses right next door. That's on the east side of West Baltimore Street, be on the north side. Those brick houses are all ranchers. If they were ranchers making that curve, I think it would fit more in with the coming into town than having these 2.5-story homes there. That's just,
The other side of the road aren't ranchers.
I know. But then,
And the
But he-
ranchers aren't up, there aren't there's only 3 or 4
no, but you got those
ranchers.
brick ones, you got those, what, 3 right there that are brick ranchers that look nice. And then you gotta put something like this next to them. I mean, I'm not saying they're not suitable, nice, but they would fit in more with what's there if they were ranchers.
One of the reasons I asked if who was gonna maintain it is that's one of the biggest things we gotta think about.
What's the size of one of those houses roughly?
Don't know square foot?
The width?
Width?
Width, I think the
Height.
building, I think the building across is about 30 or 34 feet across.
By what? 30 by what?
Depth is,
I feel like it would have to be more than that, because that'd be a very
It would
narrow
have to be more than
townhouse.
that for duplex.
Oh, well, I don't know.
That's a narrow house.
That's what I don't know either, 'cause that's why I come.
I'm worried about it.
Have their own sewer and water hookups to it.
If I keep quiet, you know why.
Yeah.
They have to, don't they?
They would be needed.
Have to be.
Yes.
How about those 10 units in the building, in the big building?
Everything's metered, so they're all individual dwelling
Yeah,
units.
right.
The garden apartments, how many square feet were the apartments?
We're still working on sizes of
ones?
the other ones, yeah. While they're looking at that, if I can just speak to the commission, one of the things that they had mentioned to us in our meetings was attention they have to police activity in their property, where they will have a relationship with the police department and monitor how many calls are coming out and actually take action on those residents who are causing those problems. And I think that's something that, you know, certain parts of Taneytown are missing. There's not that connection between landlords and police department. Now, some places there are, others there's not. I think having an active management company that pays attention to that and sees, okay, there's a common problem here and we just need to get rid of the problem. And I think that would help a lot with concerns given by the resident there. Just something else to consider, because that was something that stuck out to me during that meeting, was their attention to those sorts of problems.
Do you have those dimensions?
38 by 32.
38 by 32?
that's close.
Okay.
I have it earlier written, it's close, that's close.
And the garden apartments, how many square feet per apartment?
We have 2s and 1s, I'm gonna say it's about 750 and 900, roughly the average square feet on the unit, 750.
That fits into our,
900.
that's, yeah, that's, okay,
They're
750.
They're generously sized units. And I don't know that Jeff specifically said it when he was addressing the concern in maintenance, but the management company is responsible for all the maintenance. Cutting the grass, you know, the exteriors of the buildings, I just want to be very clear, there's no residents sweat equity here. You know, residents aren't like the ones cutting their own grass and everything, that's all being
It's
professional.
like a homeowners
So the
association.
management company will be handling all of the maintenance, grounds, buildings.
Shovel snow.
Yes, shovel snow, the whole nine. So that, none of that is left on the residents, because I heard, that's what I heard in your question, is sometimes, particularly with, you know, single family or semi-attached units, the residents have an agreement to maybe mow the lawn or clear the snow. That, we will be doing all of that.
Did someone in the back want to come to the mic, please? Please state your name.
Joan Bowersox from Pump House Road. And so, did you mention that in a certain length of time you would sell these? They would be, I thought you said like after 15 years.
No, Jeff described a lease to purchase program, which is not what we're doing here. So the financing that we've talked about actually requires us to own it for 35 years and operate it.
Okay, I thought he said 15, because then I wondered what's going to happen then.
A member asked if we ever sold them, and so Jeff gave the example of a lease to purchase scenario, which this is not.
Okay, so that that's not going to ever happen in this community.
Not in 35 years.
Okay, all right, that's my question. Thank you.
Paul, do you have any comments?
I think Todd ought to say something.
Okay, give me a minute. Jim? Do you have any comments, or anything at this point in
I'm a
time?
little concerned about the rental property.
It's all rental property.
I think that what we have now in this form of townhouses, there's agents in there taking care of those too. It doesn't look like they end up doing a very good job.
Off of Grand Drive and all in that area? Okay. Mr. Herring, did you have?
Todd Herring, 4259 Harney Road, Taneytown. I think when I first got exposed to this project, Jessica came to me about buying the lots that, we have the apartments off Harney Road, about buying the lot. And I had the same, I have a lot of respect for our mayor, the same stereotype that I think, yeah, it's gonna be low income housing. I really don't want any part of it. I really don't want to deal with that. But I kept an open mind, and I sat down and listened to them, talked to them. And, you know, the more they talked to me, the more it made sense. That I think it's a good avenue. We have residential there from the 3 ranchers that exist there. I don't know what else you're gonna, what you would think would you want to see there. You're seeing a gas station, you want to see something else. I mean, there's gonna be limited possibilities for things to go in that corner. To me, it looks like residential is the thing that should go in that corner. That's my opinion. As far as traffic, I know you're thinking about, you know, annexing in Sewell Farms so you can provide for senior housing. So, I mean, just the traffic, it's hard to pick which population you want to see. That comes down to a matter of opinion. But anyhow, the more I listened to the project, the more I kind of got behind it. But, you know, I have 4 daughters. They're the 6th generation to live here. We've been here since the 1800s. You know, I pass that Harney Road every day of my life. Every time I go to work in Westminster. So I told these guys, I said, you know, I have a vested interest in this property. I have 16 apartments right beside all this. It's going to be direct competition to me. You know, if the project would go through, I would at least want to have some kind of say in what it's going to look like. So they talked to amongst themselves and said, hey, look, would you want to be involved in the project? I said, the only way I would do it is if I have some say in what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, because I, like all of you, live here, and I've lived here my whole life. My whole family does. So I got behind the project. And it's not low income as I think the stereotype of low income is. We have housing assisted units. I mean, many people in town do have those. And there are other developments in town that have that aren't cared for, that don't have storage, that don't have all the things that you want to have. The on-site maintenance, the on-site property manager, they're all things that kind of appealed to me. So I think I got behind the project because I wanted to have a say in it, but I think it's a good quality project. I mean, our police officers are the ones, those kind of salary ranges are the people that are going to be afforded to live in here. It's not people that are, you know, and I don't want to stereotype either, people working at fast food restaurants or things like that. We're not bringing people in from all over the demographic. I think the statistics show that 95% of the people typically come from within the town already. So we're not importing people, we're not importing poor people, and it's not a subsidized project as I think people think it's a subsidized project. I think it's a good quality project, and the pictures may or may not show the colors and the siding and stuff, but you're gonna look at brick. You know, I don't want a crappy project. I don't wanna see something that's, you know, a bunch of aluminum or vinyl siding that's gonna come flapping down. I wanna be able to have a say in that. So I think they're gonna be good quality units. They'll fit in with the ranchers, they'll fit in with the Sobbles Inn look. I mean, to me, this kind of development fits into the landscape there. And I don't, you know, and I think you have to think about what you would want to see on that corner if it wouldn't be residential. And you have a chance for a good quality starter level house that fits into the price range of people who are hardworking people. They're not, it's not a free subsidized housing. And you know, I own the Baker Farm, which backs up to Pump House Road. So I have a vested interest in all the way around this property. And I think it's a quality project, and you know, I understand our mayor has his opinion and is not, I mean, we think a lot alike on a lot of different things, but this is one that we just disagree on, and I think that it would be good for the community. I think it is something we needed. All our apartments are fully rented. I have, you know, probably between us, we already have 75 units, and we have a waiting list. I'm sure Mr. Glass has times when he has his answering machine full of people calling from the housing list. So if you want to poll people, you poll all the people as whether their units are full. Our units are full, and we take care of our units. So I would think this project would be no less. So I would recommend that it be considered by planning and zoning, because I think it's something that is 100% Taneytownian, I think our community needs. Thanks.
Any other comments from the floor? We got three things here, options here this evening, to either make a recommendation positive, negative, or no recommendation, period, to the Board of Appeal. So I think at this point in time, we should do one of the three. So what do I hear from the commission?
I have in looking at these are these are gonna be much higher than anything else in that area, right?
Higher in what? In height?
In
or-
height.
In height.
Are they all gonna look like they're gonna upset down there among those homes that are already there? You know, Westview has all low homes on it.
I mean ranchers.
There's no, they're all ranchers on Westview, all the way up to Church Alley. And I'm just wondering if it's gonna look like they're sitting there ready to upset.
I feel like,
Well, we're not,
I feel like you're getting caught up on the design aspect
this isn't a
of this.
concept plan.
Right.
This is a recommendation for the project to move one way or the other, and our comments is be for the Board of Appeals. So that's what we should really be concentrating our efforts on. Are we in favor of something like this or not? Does this fit into our town? Is this what we want? So, Jim, you have a
Just wanted to volunteer something. You also, of course, could comment on any particular aspect of the application. If you're comfortable with one portion but not another, that could be something that you would share with the Board of Appeals as well. It may not be completely positive or completely negative. There may be things that can be supported in the application and things that you're not thrilled with. So that, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it does not have to be an all or nothing, that you can speak to something specific as well.
Thanks for that input. So, I'm ready to hear something from you, either a recommendation one way or other, or no recommendation. So,
I question what I should say.
you can,
I've got mixed feelings on it. But, you know, everyone has to start somewhere, and this is as good of a start as you can get. But if I say no, I don't like it, they could say I'm prejudiced against
then
it.
you don't have to answer here.
So I'm not
You can
saying,
excuse yourself from the
right.
recommendation. First, I need something.
Well, I was hoping that something better would come into that end of town, be available for that end of town. The rentals is a question mark in my mind. I've been living around rentals all my life, and they're not number one in my estimation. I'm not sure that I'm in favor of this.
So there was one thing that I said in our meeting before, which was, I'm not opposed to the concept, it's a location that I had issue with, only because of its prime spot as you enter town. If I can ask, I know you're seeking a motion or something of that sort, but I'd like to ask them a question. Department of Housing Community Development, can you give me a better idea of what the designated opportunity zones are? And is that something that relates to what you're doing here?
How do I explain it?
Opportunity zones is a new tax reform. That's not, what we mentioned to you was the community of opportunity.
Yeah, that's different. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't an opportunity zone development. This is a community of opportunity, which is a different designation that the HCD has. But it's not an opportunity zone tax credit thing that we're doing, so.
Okay. I see.
Do you want to Any statement?
I'm not prepared to make any statement yet, no.
Jim?
I'm bothered with the rental.
Pardon me?
I don't like the rental issue.
The whole thing is a rental project, so I guess there's no partial rental or ownership, so
Opposed to it.
you're. Okay. All right, and I'm kind of on the borderline. I understand where we gotta have a starting point. I mean, I started out for rental. Most young people do, unless they're fortunate enough to be able to have a good job to buy one. I don't like the two-story houses on the corner there. I'm opposed to that. If they were ranchers there, I think they would fit more with the area. That doesn't say that the ones behind and the garden apartments can't be what they are. But as is, I would have to give it a negative opinion. So far we got 3 negative opinions. One sustained. And Wentz.
I'm sitting directly on the fence between.
So how would you like us to put that in one?
I think you're gonna need a motion. So you're either gonna go a motion for it or a motion against it. And if you can't raise a motion, because everybody's kind of ambivalent, then that would mean that there's no recommendation.
Well, if we do no recommendation, then I would like something of what we discussed to go back to the Board of Appeals. Because I don't want them to hear that the board could, or that the commission could not make a recommendation. I would want what we mentioned somehow to get, since we don't really have a liaison other than the code officer.
So you need to probably make that in the form of a motion of some sort to get, because we work under consensus, but everybody was pretty wishy-washy about how things would be. It would be difficult to convey that, imagine trying to convey that to the next board.
All right. Then not hearing anything, I'm gonna make a motion that we give it a negative recommendation at this point, based on what is presented to us tonight. I'll entertain a second to that.
I'll second it.
Who seconded? Jim seconded. Now, I'll open that up one more time for any other discussion or any other comments from the floor. Not hearing those. All those in favor of a negative motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those one sustained. Those opposed to that motion?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so we got 3,
1,
1, and 1 sustained. I would like to see it reworked, because I'm not against the concept. So with that, motion carried. Thank you, folks. Next item on the agenda. Report. Let's give them a minute to regroup. Okay, Jim.
Okay. We've already discussed the first item on the report with regard to the pending BZA case. The second item I had, City Manager Hine had proposed that we begin a comprehensive review of the city charter and code. There are a number of small things that have popped up over really recent years, and a lot of those never see the light of day in terms of actually resulting in an ordinance or a code text amendment. So there's kind of a running list of things that we'd like to change as we move ahead. And for this group, you guys are going to have a few chapters to be involved with as we work our way through the code, because you guys deal with the zoning chapter, of course, but you also deal with the site plan and the subdivision chapters, and to a lesser extent, the design review chapter kind of plays into some of the other ones. So going forward, we're going to be coming back to you for some suggestions and to share, ideas on updates for the code. In this month's packet, I provided a hard copy of the zoning chapter, chapter 205, and as you know, we periodically have zoning-related things we've tweaked from time to time. We talked about signage. Seems like every 3 months. We talk about the displays in the downtown district, and we'd like to kind of try to get those ideas all together and work our way through in a more systematic way than kind of jumping around like we've been doing. So this will be your opportunity to kind of ponder the different aspects of the code that you're involved with site plans and subdivision and zoning. I thought we would start with zoning and offer any suggestions and input as we, at the staff level and elected officials also, put in our suggestions for revisions. So that's going to be kind of a long-term project. We'll probably have to chip away at it. And one thing that I did want to call to your attention specific to Chapter 205 is after the Board of Appeals denied the last special exception case for a liquor store at the former Sheetz site, the idea of the drive-through service at that property in the downtown business district has resurfaced. So obviously the property owner is not pleased with the board's decision and is exploring other alternatives for the property. And should we be able to put the idea of a drive-through on the table, that may result in something that's more of a positive for the downtown than some other things that might be proposed there in the wake of that Board of Appeals denial. So that's something that I would like to kind of focus on maybe early in the zoning chapter. Again, the idea of this is to not do it piecemeal, but there are I'm sure, going to be things that require quicker action than waiting and going through the entire chapter and adopting all the changes at once. So the drive-through windows in downtown may be something that could even be on the mayor and council agenda for suggestions in the next month or so. Not necessarily as a draft ordinance, but just as to whether or not we should move in that direction. So I know we've talked about that topic a number of times with this group and never really come to consensus on how best to address that. I think we've recognized that there are certain areas within the downtown district that do not share the general characteristic of most of the properties, among them that former Sheetz area. So that said, if anybody has comments one way or the other with regard to the drive-throughs, whether we should explore that further, I think the mayor and council may be looking for some input on that in the coming months.
We talked earlier, maybe a few years ago about that. What happened to the idea of a text amendment for that? Is that not feasible?
And that's what this would be. That's what all these, if we're actually updating the code, we're talking about text amendments, yes.
There's not a lot of pieces of ground like there is out there for a drive-through. I mean, you can't hardly put a drive-through downtown, and everyone should know that. But that is ideal place for a drive-through.
Especially with that alley going off to
Yes.
to Banyan Road.
Well, and going back to, I think the recommendation I had made was regarding, only certain size properties, at least an acre, has to have access on 2 different streets. Things that would really pigeonhole it to very specific properties, The only thing is, if someone comes through downtown and buys up multiple properties and then gets rid of the buildings and wants to put in a Burger King, you have to address that. They can create an acre lot that fronts them two alleys by doing that.
Right, so there is some risk involved with doing something like this through a text amendment.
Right.
And certainly we can craft it to make it somewhat limiting. And considering the current circumstances, regarding a couple properties in particular, this could even be done as something of a stopgap measure. The ultimate solution may be to actually look at, different, I don't want to say a completely new zone, but, possibly rezoning the property with the next comprehensive plan because it is of a different character than the typical downtown property, and it is contiguous to general business, but that's a much longer process, and, to do it out of cycle is really not going to happen. So, we could amend the text, and when the more immediate problem is resolved, we may want to look at it again to make sure that we're still protecting the more historic core of the downtown district, so that, as Councilman Wentz said, someone doesn't acquire a number of inexpensive properties and consolidate the lots into whatever that, say an acre is required for a drive-through. As the Burger King example shows, we've seen, properties purchased, combined, demolished, built, and there's your drive-through and demolished again.
Then demolished again.
Right.
So, so those are some concerns, but that is something that we'll probably be discussing in more detail very soon.
With the text amendment, how do we get input from the public once we make or come up with a text amendment that we wanted to do? How do we get the public's input so that they're aware of?
Right. Any zoning text amendment requires the public hearing. So that would go, typically what we would do for a zoning text amendment is introduce it 1 month with the mayor at the mayor and council meeting. The following month, typically we hold a public hearing on the workshop night, and then take comments into consideration if there are comments. If there aren't comments, it may be passed at the next business meeting of the mayor and council. If there's a lot of testimony one way or the other, it may go back to the drawing board or be massaged a little bit to address those comments. But it's at least, generally it's at least a 2-month period. Oftentimes it's a 3-month period, depending upon how much commentary there is at the hearing. But anything in the zoning chapter is going to require that public hearing.
Okay. You have anything else, Ann, or you want to just move right on into our projects?
Let's see. Well, is there consensus to explore the drive-through idea?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I don't think that's.
Let me put a finer point on this, because he's being very diplomatic, that this has been a directive that the mayor has issued, that he wants to see action on this. And he wants to see, and I don't think your board needs to delve into the specifics. You don't have to help us write it, in other words. If you tell us that you'd like to see a drive-through availability at that spot, we'll figure out how to make that happen and bring something for you to review. And the mayor has said, as soon as possible, as quick as can be, this could be happening in September, October, you'll be seeing that. And the reality is we need to deal with the properties as they are and not worry a tremendous amount of how they will be, because we have a problem with the property as it is right now. And we're trying to avoid a bigger problem is the way there's a somewhat of a backstory you're not quite aware of, but you can find out on your own. So.
Thanks.
Well, Jay, I'd like to be involved in that process as you create something. Thank you.
All right. The last thing that was
If we can change and make that a drive-through that easy, why can't we do the same thing and say that no one can buy up 3 properties and put something on it, like what has happened in the past.
We got a right to try.
Right, that's,
We got a right to try. That's discrimination.
yeah, I think that would be a legal issue there.
You know,
Well,
The issue is,
What you want.
we can do that by having a minimum lot size for a certain use. However, the combinations of lot sizes that you could come up with based on the downtown zone create a pretty infinite amount of which ones I could buy to create the puzzle. My thought is that these things don't happen very quick, that it might be a benefit, and this is off the top of my head, but we don't regulate the demolition of anything, really. So if you're worried about lots being put together, you're not talking about vacant lots. You're talking about lots that have things on them. Maybe there's a way that you can deal with the demolition of things to either slow the process or use that as a catch thing, and not necessarily worry right now about what it could be, because it could be demolished and be something great, but maybe you deal with the demolition. But that's...
We've discussed this for years. We don't do anything.
It's a good thing.
That's the... But everybody wants a drive-through window, so that we can agree on, so...
So, last thing I
So
have.
does that put it, so what we just discussed this evening, does that put it in motion for you to start something on the drive-through?
Do you need a motion?
Do you want us to put that in form of a motion, that you start forming something for the drive-through, or the consensus,
I think consensus should be acceptable for that.
It should
because
be.
it's gotta be right?
I think what you need to do is have your liaison bring that to the council at this next month's meeting, saying your board has directed or requested that this happen, so that the council then can make it so.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that at least what we decide here has some bearings on either what goes to the council or what goes to any other group. I mean, I was very disappointed in the Board of Appeals decision, based on the reason that they gave us. So I just want to make sure that our decision has a bearing on something.
We tell them.
And I
Now-
think our relationship with the council is very different from our relationship with the Board of Zoning Appeals.
That's because we have a liaison,
Well, exactly.
so the pressure's on you.
Well, and I understand that.
So Jim, let's move on to our,
Okay, yep. Last thing, I just wanted to make you aware of something going on down at the Tannery Barn site on Frederick Street. The property is still, the Mylars for the site plan have not been signed. The property is still considered residential. They have come back in again for a zoning certificate to add a pavilion over the courtyard. So they've talked with the county, with the building plan reviewers. They were willing to accept it under a residential application, and it's getting even more interesting now because they will not be able to use it for commercial use until it satisfies commercial requirements. The argument from the developer, the property owner, was that they had a contractor on site already working on the deck. They have some, cost savings from being able to put this in motion now to get the basic structure up, and then we'll address the what likely will be fire safety measures once the structure itself is up. So I wanted to bring it to your attention because you will probably be able to see it going up as you're heading down Frederick Street. And it is what it is, but I just wanted to make you aware of that. So it's going to be something that we need to stay on top of and coordinate with the county and make sure that it's not put into use until it meets all the commercial requirements. At this point, if there was interest, I don't believe the Mylars have been signed by any of the agencies. So it would be possible to, add some notation or the footprint of the pavilion on there, even though it was done under a residential permit, but it's kind of a moot point.
I don't want to sign them as chair of this commission until that gets turned over as a commercial project. Because we were misled all the way through about that project.
Thank you.
Well, I will be in
I-
touch
I
with the county
refuse
and
to
the
sign those
developer on
as
that,
chair.
and,
Until that's brought up to the standard.
I feel like they purposely slipped a site plan through, as he said, misleading us of what they were actually gonna be doing over there, which was
the
my
timing is
hesitation from the
certainly
beginning.
unfortunate.
Is there gonna be any notation of a pavilion on there? You're right, you're gonna be signing Mylars that don't show what's being
That's
done.
right.
Isn't that
That's
the
that's
essence
what-
of this?
That's the
Right.
current
Because
situation.
it was gonna be a tent, the tent is now gone and it's a pavilion.
Right, because, I mean, a pavilion is more than a red line.
You recall the last pavilion that was built in town, that was just a pavilion, and now it is the main event place.
Yep.
So, that is the issue I think we're facing, is that is what a site plan would really address.
That's the reason for the site plan.
Right.
So how would you like to deal with that, I guess is the question. Just withholding your signatures doesn't bring it back to you. Right? That's what we're talking about, is you said you didn't want to do it until it becomes commercial. Once it becomes commercial, it still wouldn't have any notations about this pavilion, unless it comes back to you.
Now, as I said, since the Mylars have not been signed, nothing's been recorded or finalized with the project, so they could come back one more time to incorporate the pavilion onto the
I
drawings.
think they would need to, even though I dread going through the process again. But yes, I guess you're right. They need to come back.
Okay.
Because the concept, the preliminary, and the final does not show.
We'll see if we can make that happen next month.
So we treat it kind of as a red line, except it's before approval. I mean, we're still
Right.
drawing it on, we're still
Right.
explaining it, and
But it
then you're
needs to
gonna.
be, right. It's just not gonna be a red line with initials.
Right.
That'll be on.
Love to see them get started. But I'd like to see them get started under the proper
Are they building up now? They're building a pavilion now?
pavilion, yeah. Well, I didn't see any footage. I was down there this evening.
Don't they gotta get a permit to build that though? The
Yep.
pavilion?
Residential, they went to,
Right,
they went for a residential.
Oh, is that right?
It's still recognized as a single-family dwelling.
And yet the whole purpose is a residential function.
Well, commercial.
Commercial, yeah, not sorry, commercial.
That was it for my report.
There's a lot of fishiness going on down there. That's all I can say.
I think you need to make a visit. All right. How about the active projects, construction phases, anything here?
All right, Meadowbrook is chugging away, slow. They've only done one this month, but that's about one or two is kind of the norm for Meadowbrook. Creekside, we've got a punch list for the developer to finish out. We did another walkthrough, Public Works did that is, and they have a small list of some items to resolve before we accept the infrastructure out there. Let's see. Meads Crossing has generated a lot of interest since they've started construction out there. We've had a number of folks calling in, stopping in, inquiring about the project, oftentimes expressing concerns about the project. The proposed access onto Angel Road that's currently the construction entrance has generated a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but has generated some opposition and some persistent opposition. I've tried to explain to folks who have talked about that, you know, we want some additional means of ingress and egress to the project because there are going to be so many dwellings there that having only two access points, one of which leads through, you know, all residential streets, the entire community, you know, that we would like to maintain that Angel Road access point in the event of an emergency or something, say there's an accident at the intersection of Meads Avenue and 194 that closes Meads Avenue. We want emergency equipment to be able to get in there with some other route other than going, completely through Meadowbrook and through the rest of the whole community. So we've tried to explain things. We've shared information from the traffic study, but there are some folks out there that are just less than happy about the whole project, I guess. So that's been time consuming, but we're working through it and they're making progress out there. The weather has not been helping them. But the Ryan Homes is waiting for 4 model home zoning certificates. They have applied for them, but we can't issue them yet because there's no stone base down for the roads. So we can't have work sites with no access for, an ambulance or emergency equipment. We're not going to have them traverse the mud to try to get out there should something happen. So that's kind of on hold until the development gets a little farther along, and they're certainly trying, but the weather has not been conducive to really getting roads in. So that's about it on Meads. The railroad crossing has also been a bit of a thorn in their side, and there was some, political pressure added that seems to have shaken things loose a little bit, so things are moving along for that now too. Any questions on?
The George's property, that fence there off the alley, wasn't that supposed to be removed or set back?
Yes, it is supposed to
They're
be.
planning on doing that soon?
I'll follow up with him. I need to touch base with him on some other issues too, so I'll include that. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything for him?
I do have a question. On York Street, there is a stone retaining wall that really looks like it's about to just crumble onto the sidewalk. Has that been addressed at all by the city?
Stone or concrete?
It's block,
Cinder block.
cinder block. It's moved out at least
It's at least
14 to
a foot,
15
yeah.
feet
The
from the
one
top.
by Blue Ridge?
Yeah,
Yes.
yep, you're right.
Has that been addressed? Because actually, I've noticed it is actually extended.
She's
quite
trying to
significant.
find somebody to do it, fix it for her for free.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Well,
what pressure can we put on before someone gets hurt?
She don't have no money.
she's not going to have the money when someone gets hurt by it either.
There are certainly differing opinions on the risk that wall really presents. I have spoken with some folks in Public Works, other folks who live along that stretch or grew up along that stretch that have said that wall has been tipping like that for 30 years and hasn't moved, and it was like that when they were a kid. And yet other people see it and say, oh my God, it's about to fall over. And, aside from walking up there and, pushing against it and things like that, it doesn't move when you push it. But that doesn't mean that it's, I'm not a structural engineer. I don't know how long it's going to stay there. But it's not obstructing the sidewalk. And I don't know that we have anything to compel them to make a repair to it as long as it's not obstructing the public walk. So we can, they're aware that there are concerns.
And she is trying to do something the best she can, and she will eventually. Because there's some people right now trying, and I'm not gonna say who, talking about going in there and trying to help her out.
It's something that's been called to our attention off and on for quite some time, but as far as it being a violation of some sort, nothing that we can, cite to compel them to take it down or rebuild it.
Okay, thank you.
It is unsafe though.
All right, Jim, or Jay, sorry.
I want to expand and just give you a little bit more background on the Meads Crossing railroad crossing, because we deal with them a lot and we keep asking, why aren't they moving? Why aren't they moving? Jim talked a little bit about the railroad crossing being an issue, and it's beyond an issue that you could ever imagine, that obviously Maryland Midland is owned by Genesee and Wyoming, the railroad there, and there's an existing farm crossing, so you need their permission to upgrade it. Well, it's not really the developer, it's really the city that's going to be owning this crossing eventually. And obviously we're going to have emergency vehicles and the whole 9 yards has got to be upgraded too. And there's no question the developer is going to pay to upgrade it. That's in the cards. But they need the permission, and that's what he was alluding to about the political pressure, that we actually had to get our senator involved to actually get them to get the application to the top of the list. When the application got to the top of the list, the response was that they have now decided that they would be happy to execute this easement for a lump sum payment of $45,000 that somebody is going to pay them to cross. And so obviously that is, a shocker for everybody. And that doesn't account the crossings for the utilities. Remember, the utilities cross further down towards the city. That would be subject to a yearly license fee.
Yeah, every year.
Right? So we're not just going to roll over. I mean, it's obvious. Everybody can say, well, the developer is going to pay, right? Let him pay. But we're stuck with this. We're stuck with the maintenance of it, the yearly fees and things like that. So we're trying to make sure we're doing it right. Of course, there's a clock ticking because they really can't get home starts in there until the major entrance is done. So we're trying to balance that. The latest research that we have is that, this is going to shock you all, that perhaps the railroad doesn't have anything but an easement across that land anyway, and that the underlying property owners actually own the entire railroad bed, in which case maybe they're not going to be able to charge for the right to go across it. But you can see how they can hold the project up. And this, of course, the goal was to have fall home starts, and we're in the fall almost. So it is a tough thing to do, but, and they're as a victim of it just as we are. So that's a little bit more of what they're dealing with Meads Crossing.
What kind of a yearly fee might we have to pay to cross out there?
I didn't get into that with them, but there's going to be a sewer line and a water line that go under to feed the Flickinger property, Larry
Pay
Flickinger.
for each one.
Each one, even though they're going to be in the same conduit and the same hole and the same deal. It wasn't nominal. I mean, it was thousands of dollars a year that you would be paying indefinitely for that. So we have their attorney working on it so that they can give us some title work, and that's been occupying a lot of our time with that. So, and I also want to expand on Creekside in the fact that they had hoped for a letter of credit reduction coming up at the September council meeting, but we're not going to entertain that until the punch list items are complete. And once the punch list items are complete, then the question has to be answered by the council. Are we going to go with the same maintenance period as we normally do? Remember, the Public Works Agreement calls for a 2-year maintenance period on these things. The developer has asked for some considerations, considering they've been maintaining it for 10 years. I mean, longer than 2. So the idea would be, are we gonna hold it for a certain period of time, less than 2 years, so they can get out and be done? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but your input may be needed on that. And the only other thing that's going to be pending that's maybe of interest to you at the next council meeting is that the chapter on open burning is going to be redone. We've had some issues with what is open burning, how do you enforce this, but the biggest thing has been people have been having these huge bonfires within close proximity to people's houses that it's like melting siding and things like that. So that is something that you have to consider when you're approving these downtown uses. People want to go out and burn their little fire bowls, but they want to make smoke and flames that you can see from the sky. So that's going on. If you're interested, you need to come to the next meeting.
Does fireworks fall under that category?
If they burn a lot of them, I guess, in the open, but otherwise, no, I don't think that's the thing. We have been deferring right now to the fire marshal on the enforcement of that, but that's not really going to work for us long term. That's it.
Okay. County update, Claire? I have no county updates right now. Thank you. Any other business? Georgia?
As you go into Creekside and make that 90-degree left back there, Bob is getting an eyesore on the back part of his lot there. It's really a bunch of junk sitting in there, very visible,
Oh,
people moving in there.
Talking about where the garage,
Yep,
the service station.
yep.
Okay, anything else? Ron,
No.
I'm sorry.
do you have anything?
I have nothing, sir.
I'm good.
Jim? Anyone from the floor have anything to bring before the commission? If not, the next meeting, September 24th, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.